Welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain Falcon Rising. This movie tells the story of a former Marine, driven by guilt and suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, who will destroy himself unless given something else to destroy. When his sister is brutally attacked while on assignment in Brazil, he then tracks down her assailants, and discovers a world of organized crime syndicates battling for control. Can he eradicate all the crimes there while avenging his sister? Let's find out in Falcon Rising. Falcon Rising begins with the story of John Falcon Chapman, a U.S. Marine Corps veteran who suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder because he saw all his friends die in the war. Because of this, he often plays Russian roulette. Luckily, his suicide attempt was never successful, because when the trigger was pulled, the gun never fired a bullet. One afternoon, when Chapman was at a convenience store, suddenly two robbers came. Chapman was not afraid, and instead, he advised the robbers not to point their guns at the stomach, because that would keep the victim alive. Chapman bravely held the gun aimed at his stomach and pointed it at his head. While the robbers were confused by his actions, Chapman beat one of the robbers unconscious with the tip of a gun. Then, he hit the second robber, knocking him unconscious. The next morning, while Chapman was resting at his house, his sister, Cindy, came to visit because she was going to attend a friend's wedding in Chapman's hometown. After that, she will return to Brazil to work as an activist, dealing with humanitarian issues in a non-profit organization. Who would have thought? After Cindy returned to Brazil, Chapman got news that Cindy was found near the beach, dying with severe injuries all over her body. Chapman immediately flew to Brazil to see Cindy's condition. Elsewhere in Brazil, a detective named Iago Santo, with his partner R0bbers, are in a neighborhood of the favela to arrest several residents suspected of smuggling illegal weapons. During the arrest, Santo was visited by a policewoman named Catarina. She objected to Santo acting in her duty area. What's more, Santo treated the citizens harshly. Seeing Santo intimidate Catarina, one of the local youths throws a stone at Santo's back. Santo reacted by pulling out his gun and aiming it at the young man. The youths gathered there simultaneously, pointed their guns at Santo. Due to the urgency of the situation, Santo took preventive measures by lowering his gun and challenging one of the youths to a fight with an agreement. If he lost, he and his men would not come to that place again. Santo's challenge was approved by the residents of the favela. R0bbers goes first to fight with one of the favela gangster members. R0bbers can beat the gangster easily because of his proficiency in capoeira. With just a few kicks, R0bbers made his opponent fall. Seeing the victory of his men, Santo shouted loudly, saying that one day he and his men would return to the favela. The local youths looked at him cynically. Returning to Chapman, who had arrived in Brazil, he was picked up by a fellow veteran and diplomat named Manny Ridley. Then, Chapman immediately visited Cindy, who was receiving treatment in the intensive care room. Chapman was shocked to see Cindy's helpless condition. Flashbacks of the suffering of the victims he had seen while serving in the war zone appeared in his mind. At the hospital, Ridley introduces Chapman to Santo, who is in charge of handling Cindy's assault case. Ridley convinces Chapman to stay calm and leave everything to Santo. However, Chapman insisted he wanted to be involved in the investigation. He asked Santo to take him to the crime scene where Cindy was found. When Chapman arrives at his destination, he is introduced to Catarina. With quick reflexes, Chapman grabbed the gun tucked into Catarina's waist and aimed it at a car. He heard an explosion coming from the car's exhaust. Seeing Chapman's movements, Santo realized that Chapman was no ordinary man. He asked Catarina to keep an eye on Chapman. Next, Catarina took Chapman around the favela area and explained about the people who live there. Catarina pointed out that several public facilities such as health clinics, schools, government offices there were all financed by illegal businesses. The citizens were forced to do this because the government never paid any attention to them. This creates a dilemma for Catarina, who works as law enforcement, because if she catches drug dealers, smugglers, and criminals, it is tantamount to giving suffering to the citizens of the favela. After showing Chapman around the favela, Catarina left him alone by the beach. Chapman, who was curious, then returned to the crime scene and monitored his surroundings. From a distance, he saw a group of suspicious young people. He followed them elsewhere. He was very surprised when he saw that Cindy's necklace was wrapped around the neck of one of the youths named Kuka. Chapman asked Kuka where the necklace came from. Kuka, who could not speak English, did not answer Chapman's question and instead showed a gesture to challenge Chapman to a fight. The fight is inevitable. Chapman was ganged up by several youths. With his bare hands, Chapman attacked them one by one. Even when Kuka attacks with a knife, Chapman can break his attack easily and snatch the knife. Then he pointed the knife back at Kuka. Suddenly Catarina appeared pointing a gun, causing Chapman to lower the knife he had placed on Kuka's neck. Katerina translates Kuka's words and tells Chapman that Kuka is one of Cindy's friends. While showing his sister's photo with Cindy, Kuka explained that Cindy had given the necklace directly to his younger sister. However, his younger sister had disappeared before Cindy was found seriously injured on the beach. So it can be assumed that the perpetrator who attacked Cindy was the same person who had kidnapped Kuka's sister. Before Chapman left, Kuka gave a notebook belonging to Cindy which was entrusted to his sister. Kuka hoped that there would be clues in the notebook to find the culprit. That afternoon, after examining the notebook using carbon paper, Chapman found the phone number of a photographer who had recently worked with Cindy. The next day, Chapman met the photographer at a cafe and interrogated him. The photographer explained that Cindy was investigating a conspiracy case related to human trafficking. The photographer refused to provide evidence of the assault on Cindy, so Chapman secretly took the photographer's flash drive as he said goodbye. But unexpectedly, when the photographer entered his car, the car exploded. The poor photographer died in the explosion. Worse yet, suddenly, a car came to a stop in front of the cafe and the people inside shot Chapman. Luckily, Chapman was able to dodge. He took a gun from one of the armed assailants and returned fire with great precision, causing them to flee. Not long after, Chapman was in Ridley's office checking the photographer's flash drive. The flash drive contained photos of Cindy with a man at a nightclub, which allegedly had something to do with the attack on Cindy. Seeing the name of the nightclub, Ridley was reminded of a group of Yakuza who had lived in Brazil for 30 years. These Yakuza are sadistic criminals who often kidnap children. Chances are, Cindy knew about it and did her own investigation. When her investigation was discovered, they taught Cindy a lesson. That night, Chapman went to the nightclub and found the man he was looking for. Chapman followed the man to the toilet and attacked him and plunged the man's head into the toilet. After the man lay helpless, he finally gave in and gave Chapman the culprit's address who had injured Cindy. The next afternoon, Chapman, accompanied by Ridley, went to the address. Elsewhere, Santo and his fellow police officers are preparing to carry out a large-scale raid into a residential area of the favela to arrest drug dealers. The attack began indiscriminately. The police immediately shot and killed all the youths who tried to escape from their pursuit. All the youths were eventually killed in the ambush, and Santo did not give any warning before the ambush began. One of Santo's men, who was still wandering around the corner of the settlement, accidentally saw several Japanese men in black suits carrying some children. Feeling suspicious, he then arrested the Japanese man. A few moments later, Santo came and approached him. But who would have thought Santo would immediately kill his man and let the Japanese man leave the favela? Santo turns out to be a corrupt police officer who cooperates with the Yakuza, so that this Yakuza group can freely carry out their criminal activities. Worse yet, Santo blamed the youths in the favela for the criminal actions of the Yakuza group. Meanwhile, Chapman had arrived at his destination. He told Ridley to go home because he would investigate the place alone. It turned out that the place he came to was the Yakuza headquarters, but he still entered bravely and beat the Yakuza he met. Not long after, Chapman was ganged up by 3 Yakuza and fought unarmed. The commotion worried one of the Yakuza member guarding the base. He immediately contacted his superior, Hirimoto, who is the leader of the Yakuza. Elsewhere, the bald Hirimoto is seen sitting in a very large courtyard. He had just hung up and walked over to a visiting guest. Then, one of his men carried a long box containing a sword. With a calm and expressionless face, Hirimoto walked slowly towards the man Chapman had met at the nightclub. With a single move, Hirimoto stabbed the poor man in the stomach, killing him instantly. Chapman is still fighting at the Yakuza group's headquarters. Suddenly, Santo and Bororo point their guns at Chapman, asking him to stop attacking the Yakuza. Chapman showed them a briefcase containing documents on human trafficking cases as evidence of the crimes committed by the Yakuza group. As he was about to leave the place, Chapman realized that Santo had slipped by mentioning Mr. Lima's name on the list of documents he had given him. In fact, Chapman had not mentioned Mr. Lima's name before. Chapman turned back and hid in Santo's car. As it turned out, Santo was driving his car away from the Yakuza headquarters towards a dock. Chapman managed to get out of Santo's car, then he hid while watching Santo's movements from a distance. At the pier, Santo visits a warehouse where the Yakuza hide the children they have kidnapped. Chapman immediately called Ridley and asked the police for help to stop the smuggling of these small children. Impatient for the arrival of Ridley and the police force, Chapman took the initiative to go inside alone. While sneaking out of sight, Chapman attacked them one by one, successfully immobilizing several Yakuza members. Chapman then ran into Bororo, who immediately attacked him using the capoeira martial art technique. But his capoeira was nothing to Chapman. Bororo fell to the ground after receiving a heavy blow from Chapman. Then, Santo came, but it turned out that he did not have good martial arts skills. Chapman can break Santo's attacks easily. But then Bororo got back up, and he and Santo ganged up on Chapman. As if that wasn't enough, Hirimoto also helped them fight Chapman with his samurai sword. But again, Santo and Bororo can be knocked out by Chapman easily. He even did it with his bare hands. Next, Chapman confronted Hirimoto. But because Hirimoto used a sword, Chapman took 2 iron rods to attack Hirimoto. Their fight was quite short. Chapman had no trouble defeating Hirimoto, who immediately collapsed after being hit by iron. It wasn't long before Ridley and the police arrived at the docks while Chapman tried to free the children. At the end of the film, Chapman faces one more problem. To heal Cindy's internal wounds will cost a fortune. Luckily, Ridley is willing to help pay for Cindy's treatment, on the condition that Chapman is willing to join the State Department as an agent under the pseudonym Falcon, the name he used while serving in the military. Having no other choice, Chapman agreed to the offer. The film ends.